Welcome to coffeeis.me podcast, where me means you, or more precisely, us. This is the show where your host, Valerian, without using any interrogation techniques, convinces coffee professionals to reveal their secrets to teach and inspire you to make better coffee and earn a few bucks on the side, if that's what you fancy. Let the show begin.
Hey coffeeis.me listeners, welcome to another episode of Coffee Is Me podcast. Today I have a special treat for you. For a long time we always interview businesses and, getting the secrets of the business, but I think that for many of us it's really refreshing to get the non-profits from the coffee world. So today I have a special guest, Lee Pike from the International Women's Coffee Alliance. Welcome, Lee.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, that's my pleasure. I think that this podcast really neglected this nonprofit world, and I think it's super, super important what you guys do. So, yeah, it's my pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah, there aren't that many coffee nonprofits, but it is a growing need in the sector to make sure that marginalized communities are heard and appreciated. So I appreciate the opportunity to spread the word.
I think there's many coffee companies which have certain missions. They do business and they have certain missions. But you're right, there's not that many nonprofits. But after you, I will discover them and have them on a podcast. How about that?
That sounds great. I'll send you some of my friends.
Awesome, thanks. I always have this warm-up question where we kind of reveal your relation to the coffee. Do you remember your first sip of coffee?
It's, that's such a good question. And I don't remember the first sip, but I do remember some very pivotal coffee experiences. I lived in Chicago for a number of years, and it's where I kind of fell in love with all sorts of food and cultures, and coffee was one of those. There was an intelligentsia in the ground floor of an office building I worked in, and I would walk in and just smell the coffee, and it was kind of like a daily ritual to go in there and talk to the baristas and learn. That's where I started learning about kind of more sophisticated coffee culture, not just, brewing, commodity coffee at home for the caffeine, but, for the experience of it. So, I hear a lot of people's coffee tasting, their first taste or, a great cup of coffee. Those stories just stick with you. I think a lot of them you remember because of the context, and coffee's central to a lot of those, pivotal experiences we have as humans.
I don't know if people know, but we process flavor or aroma, more precisely. Sorry, we process aroma in the same system in our brain where we process memories. So many times, if you smell certain coffee or pie or any food, it can transfer you to the past, and it's so true for me. Like anytime I smell the mocha pot coffee, which I don't drink anymore because it's not my favorite, but that was a coffee of my youth. I would almost say childhood, but I started to drink coffee. I think I was 12 or 13, something like that, and that's what my mom made every morning. And anytime I have that coffee, I'm like, I'm home with my mom when I was going to the school. So, yeah, you are right. It's very pivotal.
Yeah.
I have one more question about your coffee story. Can you tell us what was your kind of development? You said yet you went to that Intelligentsia Cafe, and what kind of beverages did you order in the beginning of your coffee journey, and how did they develop later?
Yeah, I would order kind of typical gateway into, more sophisticated coffee experiences, cappuccinos, and sometimes have flavored syrups. They would always have really fancy specialty drinks. But because I was able to have conversations with those baristas and they were so skilled and so knowledgeable, I soon branched out. They were doing pour overs before, like you see them everywhere now, but they, it was a strange occurrence to see a pour over being done in a coffee shop. at that point. And so, I would branch out and started developing my palate, I guess, way back then. When I left Chicago, that's kind of when I decided to embark on a coffee career, professional. And I got a job as a barista and started doing some sales and marketing. And as a barista, I was really able to learn about, the origins of coffee and flavor profiles and, how to cup coffee accurately. And I was a beginner, so I didn't know much about the taste, but you just keep tasting, you just keep trying, you sometimes fake it, and then before you know it, you're tasting a cup of coffee and you're realizing, I can really pinpoint those, defects or the things that are really special about the coffee. And so, it takes time and it just takes practice like anything. So I kind of started as a barista like many people do. Really glad I got that experience. And then started doing some more sales oriented work. And then in my time at Larry's Coffee in Raleigh, North Carolina, that's when a customer of mine who was on the board of the International Women's Coffee Alliance, the IWCA, she and I had some conversations about, what it means to be female in this industry. And she introduced me to the organization and I started volunteering. And it was just a great community of people to be a part of, great need for it at that time. And it's grown. I think there were only like 14 chapters when I first started volunteering with them, and now there are 26. So, it's come a long way.
Then we are talking about now International Women's Coffee Alliance, correct?
That's right, yeah.
The name kind of says it, but I'm still going to ask the question, what is International Women's Coffee Alliance?
So IWCA is a nonprofit that seeks to empower women across the coffee value chain, to sustain meaningful lives. So that means in producing companies, farming countries, coffee farming countries, women, we help the women and men, it's inclusive, form chapters to empower women in those communities to really grow and excel in the coffee industry, maybe help them seek resources that they don't usually have access to as much. And then in non-producing countries where there are baristas, maybe importers, exporters, women who are roasting, it's just, again, supporting them and empowering them to be seen and be heard in the industry.
Can you tell us examples, like one very concrete example, how you guys help to the farmers?
Yeah, it's different in every country. And this is one thing I find really unique and exceptional about the IWCA. We don't go in with a plan and say, this is how you have to operate. We really empower the women they create the chapter themselves. So there's a protocol that they have to go through. It's a structure that we've come up with, and they create their own board and goals and visions, all of that. And then they start programs and create initiatives that help them in ways that are important in their own communities. So that differs from Europe to Africa to the Middle East. It's all different depending on where you live and what your resources are. So we have a whole library of case studies on our website. So if anybody wants to check out different stories about how these chapters have empowered women, that's a great resource to go to. One of my favorite stories is a chapter started their own coffee festival. So they organized, created, and executed a coffee festival in an area that never had one before. And it was a great, fundraising opportunity, but also brought the whole coffee community together. They had, I don't think this was the first year, but the second year they had a barista competition. And so, it was just an opportunity for them to solidify their coffee community while, gaining support for their chapter at the same time. Gotcha.
Can you just tell us what chapter means?
Yeah, so a chapter is a country-specific affiliation with the IWCA Global Network. So like I said earlier, we now have 26 chapters all over the world. And, each chapter has their own goals and structure. But a chapter, again, you have to go through the chapter formation protocol, which involves creating the infrastructure, electing board members and leadership, recruiting community members to be a part. Sometimes there are dues associated with that. But it's just like basically creating a community organization focused on supporting and empowering women in the coffee industry. So again, lots of time men are members of these chapters, families, children of women who work in the coffee industry. Anybody can be a member of the chapter, but they're all there with the goal of supporting and empowering women.
Why do you think it's important to support women farmers?
I think that is such a good question that a few years ago, people really didn't understand. And I think when you ask that question now, it's kind of like everybody gets it. There are barriers to growth and success and financial security that women face, especially in some of these lower socioeconomic status countries where our chapters are located. So, it's important to support women farmers because they don't always have the same access that men have to owning their own land or access to training and resources. And so a lot of times our chapters, with the support of IWCA Global, they approach their governments to make sure that laws are fair to the women, that they, can own land, that they can get loans like their male counterparts and have access to financial resources so that they can really participate on equal playing field with the men in the industry as well. So, I think in non-producing countries, it's important to support women because it's a historically, male-dominated field. And so just access to opportunities. I mean, think about the coffee roasters, I think the minority are, that everybody knows are women. And so just being exposed to those opportunities, being given an opportunity to become a roaster or an executive in a coffee company, those issues aren't just unique to the coffee industry. They're unique to all industries. But with coffee specifically, I think, in agricultural communities, it's super important to support the women because they're really restricted in the amount of, access to resources that they have.
I totally agree with you. And you can look at the guests on this podcast and you can see the ratio of women and men. And I don't have any alliance with any gender. Actually, there was time when I tried to find more women to the podcast, and it's very hard. I mean, you're right. Our industry is male dominated, but there's also a question in me: why do you think is coffee industry so male dominated right now?
I think it stems from some of the, the issues that come from producing countries. So if at origin, it's more likely that a man would own land and then grow the coffee and sell it to a buyer, that makes sense that then they would be interacting more with men. I also think that, there's an amount of, with buying coffee, with importing, there's just an amount of prestige and experience that comes along with that, and also financial security that maybe men have had more access to. So I think just the culture stemming from the origin might be a reason why it's more male dominated. And then, access to resources all along the value chain. And then, I think when you get to the side of the value chain where people are roasting coffee and, making specialty coffee drinks, it becomes sort of more of a show, more of a performance. And, I think traditionally men have been more comfortable being in the spotlight, and there just seems to be kind of an edge, a cool element about coffee, that was kind of started and maintained by kind of, hipster white males. And that's changing drastically. And it's so nice to see more women, in barista competitions, or people of color, in cup of excellence competitions. And it's, I think it's a unique problem that we see in the United States, that the people that are buying, roasting, brewing the coffee look a lot different than the people that are actually planting and picking and processing the coffee. So, one reason the IWCA is so important is to make that connection between the origin of the coffee and the people there, and the cup of coffee that people drink all over the world. So, that connection and making it look, the people that are brewing it look more like the people that farm it, I think is a beautiful thing.
Do you think that if you are male and you present that coffee, whether you are a roaster, let's say, and you market it as a male or as a female, is there a difference in the perception of a general consumer?
I think people are paying more attention to where their coffee comes from. And so I think, yes, I think it does make a difference. I mean, I don't think people are really turned off necessarily by it being male versus female. But I would say that, as a female, my ears perk up when I hear, a woman is doing something interesting with coffee, and I will seek it out to purchase it and taste it. And I think that that's the same for a lot of kind of marginalized communities. You want to see, see somebody that looks familiar to you doing something, and it's exciting when you see that. And so I think people seek out that familiarity in order to know that there's a place for them in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm asking this question very selfishly, simply because I have my roasting business in Slovakia. And when the whole Me Too movement happened and we had all these conversations with my wife, sometimes with a lot of fire and disagreement, but I came to the point when I realized many of the issues what women are facing in a workplace. So I decided to make changes for green plantation. And, when anybody applies for a job, we try to look for the female perspective, because I think that there is always a different perspective from a women point of view. And because our company wants to address both genders, it's very important to have that. Plus, we started to look into coffees which are produced by women. And that was very hard. We are not buying from origin. We are too small to buy from origin. We are buying from importers. And at that time, it was very hard. It got easier. And now we always offer 1, 2, sometimes 3 lots out of 7, which are women producers. We didn't market it very well on our website yet. We just mentioned it because every coffee has its story. But for the wholesalers, we started to market as this one is a woman producer. And I was just curious, what's your opinion about it? Because for us right now, we don't see any difference in approach to that. It doesn't mean we stop it, not at all. I'm just saying that today it's not like that. For me, I agree with you. I love any product from a minority. I'm minority myself. I'm Hungarian minority in Slovakia, so I grew up all the time as a Hungarian minority in beginning from Czechoslovakia, when we split from Slovakia. Just to give you an estimate, it's like Slovakia has probably 10% of Hungarians there. And then later, when I moved to the United States, again, I'm a minority, I'm an immigrant here, right? I'm still not a citizen. And I always feel with these minorities. So anytime I can try wine, for example, from women producers, which I'm into, I love that experience. Anytime I can see other minorities producing things, I'm just curious what's their perspective on that product. So yeah, it sounds super exciting.
I think anytime, it's a long game, right? It's not off. Sometimes the change doesn't happen overnight, and you don't get, fireworks just because you bought, a lot from a female producer. But that support and just showing your wholesale customers that you do support it. And I think it's really powerful when men show that support, and financially and in marketing. It's not just women that are supporting other women, but I think there's a quote on the IWCA homepage from Kofi Annan, and it's about how communities really thrive when women are involved in all levels of the economy and professional life. It's not just so that we lift up women, it's because it really improves everyone's lives, right? And so having those different perspectives, like you said, hiring women, having them taste the coffee, they bring a diverse and unique perspective that it just makes your company better. It makes it more accessible to more people. And so hopefully that will, translate to dollars and exposure and better coffee.
Definitely more fun. I think that working in an environment where you have different opinions, different point of views, is, for me at least, it's much more exciting because it makes me think more. I have to say I'm not the person who pushes one opinion. I'm very probabilistic. Everything in my head is like with a question mark, and more inputs, that question marks becomes full stop. I already kind of opened this question with my obsession with wine when I said that I seek women producers. I don't know why. Maybe it's my kind of feeling with minorities throughout my life and I'm rooting for them, or maybe I found some flavor there which I'm seeking. I don't have an answer for that. But what is your opinion? Do you think that we can taste the difference, or can we somehow sense the different approach of a woman producer versus a male producer?
God, that's so interesting to think about. I would say yes, that there are nuances to the way men and women, treat their crops and, produce the coffee, the way they process it. Even some of the, I think where it's most evident is in some of the experimental processes that farmers are working with. So I was speaking with a coffee farmer in Oaxaca. This was a few months ago, and she was experimenting with fermenting her coffee crop, I think with kefir maybe, or some other fermenting substance. And I was just so interested, it's just things come to mind with diverse populations that might not have occurred to maybe more mainstream processes, and you just get more experimentation, and I think it's so interesting to think about the very nuanced flavor differences. I mean, depending on the origin, the soil, the country, the climate, this all affects the crop, the coffee, and the taste. And I think some people might not have the palate to discern those differences, but I think a lot of coffee people do. And I think, people that taste wine or are into craft beer, like those are very similar taste experiences. And so it would just make sense that the way the crop is treated, how it's handled and how it's processed would also affect those flavor profiles. But we should do an experiment. We should get some, Q graders together and see if they can tell a difference between, do a blind taste and see if they can tell a difference between coffee produced by men or coffee produced by women. Doesn't that sound fun?
It sounds fun. It also sounds super hard because of the vast origins and vast terroirs. It can be interesting. It's definitely something as a long-term exploration path can be interesting. And I would totally, if there are some wine professionals listening, I invite you to do the same in wine. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's very weird. I always ask this question myself, like, why do I prefer these lots? What's in it? Obviously, for green plantation, we want to help, so we seek these out. For when it comes to wine, I don't know. I don't know. I don't have an answer. But how about if you have a woman farmer who is listening today and says, "This sounds awesome. I wanna participate." How they can participate with you?
Yeah. So because we have 26 chapters, there might very well be a chapter in your area that you can join and just get involved right away. If there's not a chapter, then you can reach out to IWC Global and learn about the chapter formation process. We have 4 staff members on IWCA. So we have an executive director. We have a chapter manager. Her name's Blanca, and she is amazing. She speaks so many different languages, is able to, kind of relate to all kinds of cultures, and is super helpful in the chapter formation protocol. So she kind of walks people through from the, they have to submit a letter of intent to form a chapter, and then through, becoming a fully formed chapter as part of the IWCA Global Network. She's there for them through that whole process. So if there's not a chapter in your area, definitely reach out to us, and we will help you get one started.
On the other hand, we have coffee roasters and coffee companies who, want some profit if they selling certain coffees. What do you think is the main benefit for them to seek out coffees, for example, from your list?
We have a partnership program that businesses can become a part of, where they can use the IWCA logo on their marketing. And that, I think, just gives some credibility to, this coffee comes from an IWCA chapter. And people are starting to recognize the IWCA logo and visual aspects more now. So I think that's a huge benefit to companies to be associated with an organization like the Women's Coffee Alliance. We also have we do have the green coffee availability list, which we've had for years. But we are in a kind of a testing phase of a coffee roasting IWCA, roasters that use IWCA chapter coffee. And so that list will be published very soon. And so as a roaster that uses coffee from IWCA chapters, you'll get that additional exposure too. And so you get, an added layer of marketing and publicity for your coffee if you're using coffee from the green availability list, and then you will get listed as a roaster of IWCA chapter coffees. And then again, if you're interested in partnering and having the IWCA logo on your coffee products, on your bags, on your, coffee products that use IWCA chapter coffee, you can also reach out to us about partnering in that way, to get that additional marketing kind of punch. But again, I think, the craft movement, the farm to table, the transparency elements of food and beverages is just making people very aware, and want to seek out and know where they're, what they're consuming, where it comes from. And so having an organization like International Women's Coffee Alliance backing your product, I think that just gives it the credibility that people are looking for. It's kind of, it's like a organic certification seal or a fair trade seal. You just get the trust of the consumer when they know that you're partnering with an organization that has the credibility.
You already mentioned that you guys sell this coffee. Is it correct? Is it available somewhere else too? And is it available globally? That's important. My company is in Slovakia, and is it available in Europe?
Yeah, it's available everywhere. The International Women's Coffee Alliance does not sell the coffee. We partner with, coffee farmers and coffee roasters to make connections and to empower women in those fields. But we don't do any of the selling. Again, we have some marketing partnership opportunities. And so we get a little residual revenue from those, but we do not list the coffees or sell them on our website or, in retail outlets. We leave that to already established coffee companies, and really, support them in supporting the women coffee farmers.
I've seen that you have very impressive sponsors or sustaining partners. I know sustaining partnership from NPR, for Europeans, that's a national public radio in the United States, but I don't know anything about yours. So tell us more about yours.
I know that's NPR is the, prime example of sustaining partnership. I am also an NPR sustaining partner.
So we are, by the way. So.
Yeah. So we have a few different levels of how you can invest in IWCA and the empowerment of women in the coffee industry. Our sustaining partners are kind of our biggest supporters. That includes Starbucks and Peet's Coffee. And you can reach out to Kellum, who's our executive director, if if you're interested in becoming a sustaining partner, or if you know somebody that might be interested. We also have, again, those kind of marketing partnerships, co-ventures and licenses. Those bring in a little bit of revenue, and we have companies like Artisan Coffee Imports, Ampersand Coffee. These are people that we share logo licenses and co-venture partnerships with. My favorite level of support is, like you said, actually called an IWCA supporter. And this is a $500 level for a year, but you can split it up. You can give monthly, you can give it all in one lump sum, and it really helps just sustain the infrastructure of the organization. So, like I said, we have only 4 staff members, 2 are full-time and 2 are part-time. It's a lot of work with 26 chapters to support them and to just do all the kind of the overhead work that comes along with running a nonprofit at that kind of capacity. And so these supporters really allow us to, to be sustainable as an organization. And it's a pretty small sum. It could be you hold an event, which I've done these in my community, and I've helped other people in their own communities. And these are really fun. A lot of them are virtual right now, but hold an event where you sell tickets for $10, and if 50 people come, you give that to IWCA and you become a supporter. So it can be, a lot of different ways that you develop that financial aspect of the supporter program. We also have some, people that partner with us on specific programs. There's a company called Fire Dancer, and they do a lot of coffee training and cupping. And since the pandemic and we aren't able to get together in person to cup coffees, they've been accepting coffee samples from IWCA chapters and having their team, as well as other professional coffee cuppers around the world, taste the coffees and give the chapters feedback. So that's a great program where coffee farmers can get real professional, relevant feedback about the taste of their coffees, that give them, more ideas on how to improve their processes. So again, lots of ways to support. Amazon Smile, all kinds of things you can do to support the IWCA. But I would say if you're interested, just go to our website or get in touch with me, and you're, welcome to put my email in the show notes as well, because that was a lot of information. If you want to partner with us or support us, there are so many ways you can do it. And no matter what your means are, we'll find a way to get you involved.
I have usually on this podcast some closing questions, which are kind of the same, but I cannot ask you what kind of business you will start with $10,000 because you are a non-profit. So I rephrase this question, and my question would be, if I would give you $10,000, what would you spend it on in order to help your cause?
So I study nonprofit management, and what resonates with me so much is that the general public has this idea that, overhead and infrastructure is kind of not necessary, and they really want their money to go to specifically to the cause or to the people that are, being benefited from the organization. And that's totally valid. And the majority of our revenue, goes back into the infrastructure to help women and other people that want to support women to create these chapters and to sustain these chapters, and also to get the word out, the marketing and all that about, coffee produced by women. But the infrastructure is very important, right? So it takes expertise, like our chapter manager that I've talked about, so impressed with her ability to engage all of our chapters. Well, she deserves a salary. And so I think that infrastructure and overhead, some of it would go to that, but we also have some really awesome programs that directly support the chapters that are all over the world, that are affiliated with us. And so, I think people just need to understand that that we do have programs. We have the coffee availability lists. We have the case study library. We do webinar programs. We do training. We have, a global network of communities where we engage and connect. We have the licensing program. But these all take expertise and time and work to execute. So I would say that, if we had kind of a large donation, that just helps us sustain the organization and these programs that directly benefit the women, and to not shy away from the fact that, that expertise and infrastructure is needed.
It means that you would spend it on your boss's salary. Is that correct?
Well, so I would just say we want to be transparent and say that, some of the money that we raise, it's necessary that it goes to infrastructure.
I get it.
But most of it goes to supporting the programs that elevate, amplify market visibility for our chapter members and women in the producing and consuming countries.
I get it. Not too many people know. Actually, I never really talked about this on this podcast, but my background is I'm a political scientist, and I used to work for nonprofits, human rights nonprofits in my homelands. That's how I started my whole career, and I later worked in post-war Kosovo and Bosnia and Herzegovina. So I get that infrastructure is very important, but also I get that people are many times worried that, the whole organization eats up the money on their infrastructure and they will not give enough back to their cause. And I think the right way here is, like you mentioned, I think before, is the transparency and kind of just show that, look, this is this is what's happening, this is what we do, and we need professionals for this. It's not everybody can do that right. I mean, maybe some nonprofits are okay with having only volunteers, but I remember when I was working in a nonprofit, I was volunteering for a long time, and I really loved what I did. And if the organization would not find money for me, I would not be able to stay with them. And that was cool that they did. And I was working with them for a longer time. And I enjoyed every second of it. So I get it. I think that you are right.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. And remember in the beginning when I was introduced to IWCA and they had something like 14 chapters, at that point, they were completely a volunteer organization. And so in the past 4 years, to almost double the number of chapters and visibility, to create these availability lists, case studies, training and leadership programs, that came because we decided to move to a staffed model so that we would have, paid leadership that was really dedicated to making all this stuff happen. So, if you want to sustain this organization, if you want to help the sustainability of it, if you really believe in empowering women, I think you can trust that our organization is going to do everything they can to amplify, the work and the love of coffee that these women have. And that's our main goal, obviously. But yeah, that infrastructure is just something that not a lot of people know, and I just like talking about. So I appreciate your willingness to engage with me on that.
Sure. Do you have any questions or question for me?
Yeah, I mean, coming from, as you mentioned, your background in nonprofits and, as a coffee industry professional, and you have knowledge of different cultures and opinions, what I would ask, what could the IWCA do maybe to grow our reach or to engage people that maybe don't know about the organization? I mean, obviously podcasts and things like that, where we get to talk about it and new people get to hear about it. That's one way. But I'd be curious to hear if you have any other ideas.
That I usually don't get these questions ahead, so I did not have time to prepare a complete list, because I tell you, I would be more than happy to. But I think that, look, throughout the conversation, I try to kind of get you to tell us where we can really get your coffee. And when I mean we, there's a lot of small roasters here. Not everybody can go and buy coffee at origin. And let me tell you, like, even in Slovakia, when we started, we were the only roaster in 2012 who did light roast and specialty coffee. Today, I think there are like 30 coffee roasters. So, but they're all small, so they cannot really go to the origin. And I think that it's true for every country in the world. And you need to address these organizations or these roasters somehow, make them make sure that they can purchase your coffees from your farmers very easily. It's very accessible. I think that if the best thing you could do, let's say for me, would be that if I can go to my favorite importer in Europe and I see a logo next to certain coffees, that would make my work easier. And you also, of course, with purchasing that coffee, I get all the information what I'm buying, which I guess you guys are doing. But I think that would be the best way how to spread your word through these roasters, and also help this roaster to spread the word to the consumers. I think that's what comes to my mind as a first thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you're right. Not a lot of roasters can go to the green availability list and just connect with a buyer directly. And like that capacity is not realistic sometimes. So working with importers to make sure that they're, bringing in coffees from IWCA chapters and advertising it, and making that transparency a priority. Something we should look at. So thank you for that idea.
Sure. And I looked at your website and I love the wide range of origins you getting the coffee from or you are working with. And there were some, like you mentioned, Yemen. Yemen is in a civil war right now. That was, I guess, super hard for you to get, to establish a chapter there. Or there were some other countries which are not that, quotation mark, cool in the specialty world, but yet super interesting because things are happening everywhere in the world. People are, even the farmers have internet, so they see what's happening in the specialty world. So saying, for example, that Vietnamese coffee is only Robusta is not valid today. I mean, there are people who are working with Arabicas and they're doing some interesting processes. Same thing with Laos. I mean, I had coffee from Laos one time and it was very interesting. The guy was doing experimental processes long before anybody else. So I really appreciate that your organization works in different origins. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the countries where there is kind of cultural and political strife, it is difficult. But our organization does not go into these areas and dictate what they need to do. So it really is a testament to the chapter leaders in Yemen. They submitted a letter of intent and they formed their own chapter in the middle of all that strife. And so it just goes to show, how important it is and what a priority it is for them to have a chapter like that where they feel supported. And I mean, it's not just the specialty coffee world that we support. It's commodity coffee and Arabica, Robusta, whatever, anywhere in the coffee industry where there are women working, we want to be present and support them. So yeah, Vietnam was an interesting one too. We just actually had our first European chapter formed this year. It was Germany. So that was very exciting. And the United States they have a chapter that's in formation currently. But yeah, it's we have a WhatsApp group chat with all of the chapters all over the world, and it is just astonishing, how connected it makes you feel, globally if you have connections like that. I think it's one of the kind of like intangibles of working with this organization is that, when there's a hurricane in the United States or when there's a earthquake somewhere else or, political uprising, it's so heartwarming because everyone around the globe, all the IWCA chapters reach out in support of one another. And it's a really lovely community of people, not just supporting people, professionally and as related to coffee, but personally as well. So, and that's really important in this day and age is to feel that interpersonal connection. So yeah, it's a great group of women to be involved in.
Super impressive. All right, Lee, now it's your time to plug away. So where can people find you and what's happening?
Go to womenandcoffee.org. You can find all the things I talked about, the case study library, the ways to support, sustaining partner programs. And I would say if you have any questions, just reach out to me directly. You can email me. It's Lee, Lee, .p, like Paul, Lee.p at larryscoffee.com. We're a roaster in Raleigh, so if you want to check out our products too, or if you want some samples, I can send them to you. But the IWCA is a great organization. I'm so proud to be a part of it. And so womenandcoffee.org, check it out, follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Hopefully the board is going to be doing some Instagram live sessions. So you might see my face light up Instagram sometime soon, and follow IWCA on Instagram to find out more about that. We have a great campaign going on right now. It's in honor of International Coffee Day, which was on the 1st, and International Day of Rural Women, which is on the 15th. And you can donate in honor of a woman who has empowered you, or a person who has empowered you. And so we're getting lots of great messages about, how mentors have empowered their mentees, or how mothers have empowered their daughters, or just really amazing messages about people supporting one another. So if you go to womenandcoffee.org and take action, you'll see more information about that specific campaign. So I think that about covers it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining Coffee Is Me podcast. And I wish you not only good luck, but I wish you a lot of success. Thanks.
You too. And I hope we connect in, other capacities down the line. So I appreciate you having me on the podcast. It was super fun. And let me talk about coffee and IWCA.
All right. Bye.
Bye.